Rochester. Let me see. I remember when they had the big fire at the corner of at St. Paul and Main. They had a great big fire there. My father took us down. I was in the buggy yet.
A fire with a fire department running up Main Street with the galloping horses pulling the fire engine, and it was already started smoking. That was a thrilling sight almost to see. I had gone there and finally tried to attract the attention, and then walked inside of the fire line. Ropes had been drawn and got the devil, and tried to get a policeman to do something about. There was a little spark up in the tower of the Bertha temple, which then went too.
I remember Powers Block too. That was the first fireproof building built in the city. And my father had his office there, but on the top floor was a ballroom, and quite a good sized ballroom. But I went there when I was about 7 or 8 years old to dancing school. And I learned the lancers and all the square dances. That's what we learned. We always dressed up. My goodness, I had a white dress with a big sash and a big bow in the back, and white stockings, of course, and little black shoes. I also remember the Granite Building when it was built, because it was the highest building in the city when I was a little girl. And my uncle had his office on the top floor, so we went up there quite often, and if it was a clear day, we could see the lake from the top floor of the Granite Building. Well, I don't think it was very high, 11 stories maybe, 11 stories. But it was considered quite high for that time. And the lake, of course you couldn't see the lake from very many places. Cobb's Hill you could on a clear day, but the Granite Building too. Then I also remember where the Liberty Pole is now, there was a triangle of land, and there were stores there. And one store I remember in particular was called Milliman's, because they sold all kinds of spices. And in the winter, they had dead rabbits hanging outside. Well, people bought rabbits. They made rabbit stew and rabbit soup. And well, it was considered a delicacy. I never had any.
Yeah, I know.
But I remember those dead rabbits hanging outside that door.
Well, Reynolds Arcade years ago, that old, they used to have a shoe shine, a big shoe shine parlor in there. 6 shoe shiners maybe working. There was a Greek, George something, I forgot his last name, had run that. And there was a barber shop in there. I had 6 barbers. I used to go in there and get a haircut or shave in them days. And then right on the 4 corners, there was the Mighty Dollar, a beer place, a beer saloon, a little place, the Mighty Dollar, and they had silver dollars in the floor, right in the floor. There were silver dollars all around, cemented right in the floor. They called it the Mighty Dollar. And beer was a nickel a glass some days. Because we used to stop in there, come and get a beer before we went home.
There were lots of saloons along the way, and I was, they had the swing doors when you go in and out of a saloon. And I thought to myself, I wish one of those doors would stay open a minute so I could see the inside of the saloon. And I never had a chance to see the inside of the saloon, because the doors wouldn't stay open long enough for me to see. On West Avenue, that was on the corner of Canal Street, I think. My mother said, you can walk down as far as Canal Street, but you must not go any farther. I don't want you to go by that saloon. So we had to turn around and come back. But there were lots of saloons. I don't know what's happened to them all.
Oh yeah, they had the hay market down Front Street years ago. The farmers would come in as 15 miles away with horses with loads of hay and the hay market, and they would sell the hay there to the different places. Like Sibley's had horses, the milk companies had horses and all, and they had to have a feed. So they'd bring hay in and sell it. It'd take them all morning to get to the hay market, and they'd sell it and get back home by dark maybe with that. Front Street would flood in the spring before they put the dam in up the river. Flood Street would flood a lot of times, and the rest would go out down there. It would flood all the businesses down there. They just had to get out when they know that water was coming. Yeah.
And used to sell a lot of produce and chickens.
Oh yeah, chickens and live chickens and different kind of meat markets. There were 3 or 4 meat markets down there. And on the corner of Front and Main, there was a Greek that owned the fruit and nut place on the corner. I forget his name. And a lot of the men used to go there for lunch and just eat fruit and nuts for lunch. And sit around there and talk. Stand around and talk.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Front Street was a busy place years ago. Yeah.
We had beautiful theaters here. Oh, loads of them. There was Cook's Opera House. I used to go there with my sister when I was only 4 years old. She used to cart me all over because they used to have vaudeville there.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a nice place. And the Lyceum Theater. That I went to every Saturday for 10 cents. They had operas and everything else there. Oh, yes, yes, yes. I seen Aida there and I loved it.
Cook's Opera House, and they had a man with the name of Monk, I think, who was the orchestra. He played the piano, and that was good fun going there. There'd be a juggler and maybe an animal act.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah, I think probably 5 or 6 different, or 6 or 7 different acts in the show.
Oh yeah, well on Main Street there was a Budgeon theater. There was a nickel. They had a sign right on nickel on the sign, a big sign on front nickel.
What did you go see there?
Oh, it was movies, silent movies. But the man, there was a man down in front playing the piano, making the music, and they showed the movies and days.
Okay.
Yeah. I worked on the Eastman Theater at the time. When they built that, and that was 1921, I worked on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did you do on the Eastman Theater?
We had all the bronze doors to put in, and the doors and stuff like that. Windows and doors and stuff. American Glass Construction Company. Yeah. There was a strike that summer. George Eastman then says, after the strike was on a while, he says, the boys are worth 10 cents an hour more, and that broke the strike. You know what we were getting that time? 75 cents an hour, and we got 85, and George Eastman said they were 10 cents an hour more. That was good money them days, yeah. Well, I went to American Glass Construction Company. They were on Cortlandt Street, where Midtown is now. There was a street run up through there, Cortlandt Street, and they were on that street. Their office and buildings are on that street, and up where Midtown is now. And they used to put in glass, you know, put in windows all over and different places. And I worked on Kodak and Gleason and all them bee factories and Fallon's out on the east side and I'm on the west side. And then from that, 1921, I went into carpenter work, and for a man that worked with me at the time, he was a boss at the American Glass Company. He quit there and I went to work for him and went into the store business, storefront and fixtures. Storefront and fixtures, yeah.
You know what the aqueduct is? Well, the canal continued up and went up right next to our factory and went on and on. But my office factory looked down at the canal. And one day I was summoned by the receptionist. The man was very much disturbed. He had a canal boat, and trying to go under the Clinton Street Bridge and was stuck. It propelled under it, and well, there was a company, I don't know if it still exists, the Rochester Lead Company, and we phoned Rochester Lead. And the man came up and took a squint, and then he brought lots of lead, bricks of lead, and put them on the boat until it weighed down enough, and the boat went on.
Of course, you know, the Erie Canal went through Rochester. It went, and there were bridges. We used the bridge on West Avenue most of the time, all the time, because that's where we lived. And that was a lift bridge over the canal, and it was always getting stuck up. And we had to wait on the streetcar for them to fix it, or else we had to get off the streetcar and walk through a little street, like a lane, with 2 stores on it, I think, to Clarissa Street, which was called Caledonia Avenue then, and walk over that bridge over the canal. But that bridge had steps to it, and we had to climb up the steps and walk across the bridge and down the other side, and then got another streetcar. We were given transfers. The transfers were free in those days, and then we could continue on the way.
Absence of the streetcars, the horse cars, is the biggest change. The driver was protected by a metal sheet in front of him, but it was about 6 or 8 inches from the floor. Went about waist high, and the ends of it left room enough so that people could get in and out of the car. It was terribly cold. And one bad spell, winter spell, my mother had us assemble a group of friends, and I don't know if this is a little too well, anyway, you look down Union Street toward Court, where the road had been shoveled, and you could see when a horse car turned in. And a fellow then who was standing watching up there would run to our back door, and the person inside would come out with 2 pails of coffee and a sandwich. And we took them out to the driver and the conductor, and then stood there and collected on the way back. That's a very vivid memory.
My father'd say, hurry up with your dinner. We were going down, and he'd buy what they call a pink ticket. And that would take you a lot. He's down there, and we'd have a drink down there. My father and mother have a drink and a sandwich we would have, and we'd stay there a little while, and we'd get aboard a boat. We'd go over to Seabreeze. That's all on this one ticket. And they do the same thing over there. Then you board a little yacht around Iqaluit Bay and go to Glen Haven. That was all one afternoon.
We spent the summers at Forest Lawn when we went to Charlotte. We got on, we took a train from Forest Lawn to Seabreeze. 5-minute ride, 5 cents. Then we got off the train at Seabreeze and took a rickety old two-deck steamer to Charlotte. And got off and went in the amusement park. It was as big as Roseland, or even bigger. And you went down on the trolley, or you took a train down. If you took a train, there was an admission fee to get into that park. But if you took the train down, the train went right into the park. And you didn't have to pay a admission fee. And I think the station was about probably where the parking lot is now, I mean on the riverside somewhere. And they had the big roller coaster and all the other rides and things that they do, Ferris wheel. Not as elaborate as they do today, of course, I suppose. But they had all those things, and a fortune teller. And my girlfriend and I went in there, a fortune teller. They told me I was going to be married twice and have 4 children. So I had 4 children, but I didn't get married twice. And they always had a outdoor show, acrobatic show, over the lake where they performed high dives and things like that. And we always went to that. And they had a band concert sometimes. Not, I don't suppose they had it every day, but sometimes.
Oh, that's nice.
And that was quite a thing. I don't know when the city took it over. Well, it did deteriorated. People, when the automobiles came, you know, people could go farther away.
I remember that my eldest brother bought a Cadillac. It was 1 cylinder. The cylinder was underneath the seat, running lengthwise. You started the car by a big wheel on the side. You poke it in and start it. Now, I remember that we were going to be, he was very ambitious. He was going to go to Canandaigua, and we gathered little pieces of copper wire and a couple of bolts and nuts and all things to prepare for it. They were very different from today. And you bought a car, it was a car, and then you bought a top, and with the top came a roll-up isinglass windshield, so you bought a windshield. It had oil lamps on the 2 side ones in the front and an oil lamp in back. And if you wanted big lights, you bought big lamps and a generator which stood on put it on the running board and put pelts in it, little bigger than an orange pits, about that maybe, and then let water scientifically drop down drop by drop, and it would create a gas, and then you'd light that if you're lucky. And when he went to buy his next car, he was advised by some people that it wouldn't be safe because the cars were closed cars, and the driver's seat was the way you see it now. And the difficulty of getting out in case of emergency, people said, there's a little reluctance on buying that great improvement.
Well, the first one I had was $400, and it was a Oldsmobile. It had only driven about 400 miles. The lady that had it passed away, was a friend of my wife, and she let my wife have it for $400, 4-door job, and I drove that for 9 years. And it run good. Yeah. Years ago, the mayor here in the city had an old chuckety chuck wagon. He used to come down Main Street when it was cobblestone. You could hear him coming a long ways because that thing, I forget what they called them cars them day. They would just chuck along, and make a noise. Mayor Edgerton and Mayor, what was the other guy's name? Mayor, them old-time mayors used to have an old car coming down Main Street. Joe, boy, it was rough riding them days. Well, them days, they had telephone poles all along Main Street, too. Poles, to handle the wires for the trolley lines. The wires would come, these poles to carry the trolley wires in the middle, And there were a lot of poles along Main Street in them days, wooden poles. I worked nights in the telephone office, and they had a little telephone office. And in order to, rings 1 or 2 or 3 to mend the party on that line. There may be half a dozen people on that line. You ring 1, that would be one party. You ring 2, that would be another party. Maybe all of them would listen in, because some days they didn't have a separate one line. They were all on one line.
He had 2 telephones in the house. One was a home telephone, which was just for city calls, and the other was a bell telephone, which was for out-of-town calls. And my father had 2 like that in his business. And Mother could call up on the phone and order anything, and it was delivered. She quite often called Sibley's and had them send 2 or 3 dresses up on approval. And then she'd pick out one and send it back. I remember Susan B. Anthony very well because, well, like a child, I was 10 years old when she died. And my mother was one of the guards. Her body was laid in, what do they call it, in state, in the Central Presbyterian Church where they had the funeral services. She was a member of the Unitarian Church, but that was a small church. And they expected a big crowd. And I thought she was a very nice lady. I didn't think she was mannish or anything, but she did want votes for women. She thought, you know, women that should pay taxes should pay vote. Women that voted should pay taxes. And she was a friend, quite a friend of my mother and father's. I suppose they got acquainted in the neighborhood, and then she formed a club called the Political Equality Club in Rochester. That was for votes for women. And my mother was treasurer of that for a long time, and she sent me around the neighborhood to get the dues. After Susan B. Anthony died, they kept the Political Equality Club going, and we had big parades where we wore yellow dominoes up and down Main Street to advertise the 20th Amendment, you know. And we even went to Buffalo one day, I remember, to march. Mother worked in the booth for a few years, election booth, after the amendment was passed. One of the first women to work in the booth. Oh, they said, well, the booths are so dirty, they'll be all drinking and there'll be a lot of dirt and everything. No, we don't want women there. Well, as soon as the women got in, it was cleaned up, I'll tell you.
You ever hear about what happened weekends on East Avenue when we had good snow on the ground? Well, the smart group had horses. They used to race on East Avenue from Goodman to Culver Road, then with their cutters. And when it became too difficult because of traffic, they couldn't do it. Then Canterbury Road was built, and that became the racetrack.
The boys used to tie their sleds to bobsleighs, and that was against the law, but they did it anyway. And they used to ride on the runners, which was against the law, but they did it. I don't think the girls did, but unless they were very not boy-like, but the boys did lots of times.
Hitch their stuff up to the back of
Yes,
the sleigh.
if a sled or bobsled stopped to deliver groceries or anything, they'd hitch their sleigh to it, their sled, and the driver never said anything. It was dangerous, though, but they did it anyway.
God, that's great. That's wonderful.
And I think we had more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, them were the days.